Thank you for joining me for this tutorial, Advanced Valuelists in Servoy 4. Today we're going to take a look at data-driven value lists, related value lists, both with a single relation and also what's called an N-to-M relation, or a second relationship, and also how to write your own custom value list using SQL. Let's pop over into Servoy Developer and get started. Here I've created just a very simple one-form solution, and I've done a couple other things. Here I've created 3 global variables, and I've placed those global variables underneath the company name and the customer ID. And I've made them drop-down menus. I've created also a couple of relations. The first one is customers to orders, and that's based on the customer ID in the customers file to the customer ID in the orders file. And then I've created a second one from orders to order details, where the order ID in orders matches the order ID in order details. And then finally, I've created 3 different value lists. So let's take a look at those. The first one is customers to orders. And so I went down here to database values. I chose the related values, and I've chosen just to show the order ID. Right? Very simple. All I want is a list of the orders for this particular customer. The next one that I created is called Customer Order to Order Details. And here again I've chosen customers to orders, but then I've chosen the N-to-M relationship, which means I can join customers to orders, and then orders also has a join to order details. So what I'm going to be taking a look at through this N-to-M relation is all of the unique product IDs that this customer has ever ordered. And I'm just going to show the product ID. And then finally, I created a value list that's going to hold our SQL data. So here is just a simple custom values. There's no values in there because we're going to populate it at runtime. Here on our customers forms, I have my list orders, and this is going to show me that customer to orders value list. And then down below, I've also placed a portal so we can also see all of them at once, just to make sure that the value list is functioning properly. Let's have a look and see how that looks in the Smart Client. So here I have my first record, and I have a list of all of the orders here. And if I pop down my orders list, you'll see that the 2 lists match. So all of the stuff in the portal matches the stuff in the value list, which means that we're getting the correct values. Now let's take a look at the N-to-M relationship. So this is a list of all of the unique order items that have ever appeared on any related invoice for this customer. What we want to do is we want to use SQL to go ahead and generate exactly the same list. And to do that, I've created a Set List button on the form that's going to go ahead and run a method that's going to populate our value list for us. So let's take a quick look at that. All right, so here's my method. First, we set up a variable called max return rows, and that equals 100. You can go ahead and limit that number of rows that comes back as a result of your query. And I've set up a very simple SQL query, one that will just do exactly the same thing as the other value list definition that uses the M-to-N relationship, but I've just wrote it out here in SQL. And notice over here that I've used a question mark as the parameter. This is where the customer ID is going to go. When you use a question mark, you're doing something called a prepared statement. When you use a prepared statement in SQL, which is something that you should always do when you write your own SQL, especially in Servoy, by not hard-coding the customer ID in there and by using this question mark placeholder, your SQL database doesn't have to go and analyze the query every single time it goes to run it. So then we're going to make a new variable called args, and that's going to be a new array. And into that array, we're going to put the customer ID of the current record. And then finally, we're going to go ahead and set a variable called dataset, and we're going to pass it our query, our arguments, and how many rows we want returned. We say if that data set has something in it, if there was something found. So we're telling the application object to set this value list named customer order item SQL to the first column that came back in our data set. And we're going to automatically turn it into an array. And then finally, if there's nothing that came back as a result from our query, maybe our customer doesn't have any orders yet, it'll just say no items. You can always see what the full syntax for all of these commands are. They're over here in the database manager. So here's get data set by query, and you can go ahead and move a sample over into your own code and get an explanation Also for the dataset item, which is what comes back as a result of your get dataset via query, if you expand the node and click on JS Dataset, you'll see that there's lots of things that you can do automatically to a JS dataset, like you can get it as HTML, you can get it as plain text in case you want to do something like a CSV export, for example. Let's go back to our customers form, and we'll see that the Set List button is just set to do that method. A better way, of course, would be to just put it onto the event of the form. Now let's go ahead and do that. So rather than having a button, you can just attach it to the on-record selection event of the form. This will make sure that it triggers every single time the record is changed. All right, let's save our form with Control-S, and now view it in the Smart Client. So now when we come back and we take a look at our value list that's generated through the N to M, we see that we have a number of items. If I come over here to our SQL list, you'll notice that it's populated with exactly the same items. So we're getting the same end result. Now, why would you ever use SQL to populate it when you can use N to M? What if you had a situation where your data was maybe 4 or 5 tables away, or you had some other kind of criteria that was based on more than one data point? So there's lots of different times where you may want to build your own SQL-based value list. And that's how easy it is to do using Servoy 4.